That's right. That's exactly what I've got in my holding right here. These are okay. So of all the special needs heroes and the people within the special needs group themselves and other people, of the highest performers of the year, sat down. We asked them, what are the top lessons you would have? How could someone finish out 2020, go into 2021? And this is a time where people are freaking out, right? The entire planet, everyone's going nuts and thinking it's the worst time ever. How can you make this the best time ever? How can you create the absolute best out of these opportunities and make the most out of them? This right here, what I'm looking at right now, is the top ideas. This is from some of you have seen, some of you haven't yet. We haven't officially released it. Our book on the spectrum, the Mel Brooks spectrum. That's how we've been able to do all the work we have with our special needs heroes. And a hero is really anybody in our world. But this is based on that and a combination of that and other material. But basically, all this information is readily available. You should have all of this. So this is stuff you can use right now to get badass with it. Let's get started. These are the 5. I thought it would be 1, and then I thought it was 3, but I guess there's 5. 5 big secrets here. So number 1 is tap it into the universe. This is a concept. This is another book we were reading. What was the name of that book that we were doing the review on? We're in the middle of it. It was something. This was a quote from that book, and Coming Alive. This was so we've been doing one of the concepts. This idea of reading a book a week. I've been saying, a shortcut of reading the book a week. If you like playing video games, start listening to an audiobook. Listen to it at 2 to 3 times the speed, and it takes their average book is about 300 pages. And it's going to take about 1 minute to read a single page, usually, like in a Word document. The audiobook is going to be about 7 hours. If you listen to 1 or 2 or time blocks a day, you'll be at almost a book a week. I go through about 3 time blocks, so about an hour a day I try to listen to. But if you go 1 time block at a time, 19 minutes at a time, it'll be amazing how quickly you can listen to an audiobook. And you don't have to be completely present when you're listening to it. Don't worry about that. Just play it, and it'll be in the background as you're doing other stuff, and you get addicted to it. It's a quick way to read a book a week. But in this book, listen to this quote here. This is pretty brilliant, and this is one of the first quotes that they put here. Most people suspect that they could live a completely different life from the one they're living now. In this other life, their days are joyful. They're more confident. They take more risks. The things they do feel more meaningful. It's as if in this alternate existence, they've plugged into a different kind of energy, an energy that makes anything seem possible. What they suspect is true. This energy is real, and it has the power to change lives. We call it the life force. This is in the book Coming Alive. It's the great prize of the universe, immortal, unstoppable, endlessly creative. Think of this book as a can opener for your soul. It will give you the tools you need to access the life force and defeat your inner enemy. They call the inner enemy the part X. We call it the LC, same thing. Only then will you discover what you're truly capable of and come alive in a way you have never before. This idea, this concept is not new. This is here's a quote from Tesla that I've used for read any Tesla, one of the greatest minds ever. Da Vinci also talked about this, talking about the sky. Da Vinci called it the source. Socrates also called it the source. Basically, tapping into something bigger than yourself. This is the number one. If I was to summarize, what is the difference when, as you guys know, when somebody has mental illness or terminal illness or has something that everyone around the world universally throughout history looks down on or looks at as this is something that it is understandable to get discouraged by, to get to the D word by, yet they don't do that. They resist. They not only do they not get depressed, but they go to the opposite extreme. How do you have optimism when there's no rational, no logical reason to do it? It's because you're tapping into something else. Check this out. This is one of my all-time favorite quotes here. Tesla talked a great deal about this. He said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and all inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core or its location, but I know that it exists." Say it again, that my brain is only a receiver. This idea that when you're in the place you're supposed to be, when you're doing what you should be doing, you are a vessel. You're like a paintbrush of the universe. This is when we say, if you know the story behind why we say make the universe smile, it's the same thing. We're talking about the universe, the smile of the universe. When you can feel the smile of the universe of God or whatever you want to call it on you, it is an actual thing. I'm going to tell you something later today that I've never said before about when I first started the work with my son and my cousin, who's one of the smartest human beings ever. She's a little bit younger than me, and she had a perfect score on her SATs. I'm not saying a good score or a high score. She got a perfect score, one of like 300 or 500 kids in the nation or in the world that got a perfect score on her SATs. Insanely smart. And the most crazy argument we ever got into was about the work I was doing with my son, because I don't ever talk about the extent to which, when I had first adopted him, the extent to which, and I only mentioned that he's adopted to say I wasn't there for the beginning part of like this, the meltdowns and the stuff like that. But when I really downplay the severity of how it was for several hours, just going, totally nuts, screaming, biting, easily would have killed himself without a doubt if he had the opportunity or the chance. Had to hold him down, had to put, weighted blankets on him, mouthpiece, helmets, full on, like for several hours a day. It was crazy. But I wasn't, for some reason, I felt like, and I never said why. I never actually verbalized this until years later to anybody except, to him. Why my cousin would be like, you're not qualified for this. Nobody would do this. Nobody's expecting you. I don't know why you're doing this. He needs like professional help. And she would say that. We went to a center together, and I said, look, all they're going to do is give him what they call the football, that big pill that gives him Cat Williams. He has a great stand-up set on this about that pill, because the same thing they did with his son. You give him that pill, and it's the coma pill. He's in a coma, but he's awake. He'll just sit there. You okay? Yeah. You hungry? No. You want to get up and do anything? No. They're just in a coma. It's crazy. Like, to go to that extreme, I wasn't ready to do that. We got in this big argument about it because truly I really wasn't qualified. But what was the main reason why I felt like I knew that the work that we did with him, everything that we're doing right now, the entire special needs project, connected with Anna, all this stuff is a result of that. Why did I know that I was supposed to do that? How did I know that was my destiny? I'm going to tell you in a second. Actually, this quote here by Henry Poincaré. He was the brilliant, one of the best, greatest math minds ever. This is an interesting quote he has here. Science is built up of facts, as a house is built of stones. But an accumulation of facts is no more a science than a heap of stones is a house. Certain collections and arrangements seem unsolvable by humans. First, I'll go to that part again. An accumulation of facts is no more a science than a heap of stones is a house. That's like, if I've said this for years, like if you know the alphabet, and I say, oh, did you read that book? And you say, oh, I didn't read the book, but I know all the letters. It's like, yeah, it's the arrangement, right? It's the way it's put together. That determines everything. So as he says, certain collections and arrangements seem unsolvable by humans. Then, as what he called the great light bulb, or the light bulb goes off, pages of equations, entire chapters, and unprecedented breakthroughs are coming out of you. As if by magic, you have access to knowledge that is not in your brain. In this place, talking about when he tapped into the universe, what he's calling it, the light bulb. In this place, time and space do not exist as they do in our place. And I'll tell you the reason why. I know this sounds totally crazy, and I've never said this. I'm only saying it right now like on a recording. You know what I'm about to say. And when I said it to you, I was like, this is crazy. I should never say this. And you said, no, we need to put it. So it's going to be in the book, but it is in the book, but it would not in the versions that we've been given out. Why was the reason that I kept working with my son? Why was I so sure that we were going to get it done? It's because I had tapped into this place. I know it's not, I just knew it was something, it wasn't from me. I'm not this great, wonderful person. Like, I'm not somebody that, goes and looks for old ladies to help across the street. I mean, I would do that, obviously, but I'm not like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like, taking off, my S, going to the phone booth and switching out, taking off my, clothes for the S, I'm not Superman, is what I'm saying. But it was because, how did I know he was going to get through it? How did I know he was going to do badass stuff? How did I know it was going to work out? Because, and it was an inexplicable thing, just like he's saying, in this place, time and space do not exist. When I read that, I got chills, because the fact is, I had memories of it. And I know how that sounds. But once I told this to you, right, she was the same way. Like, she said, I know exactly what you mean. And now I've had this conversation. I have to have it on a one-on-one conversation with people. And I ask them, have you ever had a memory? Have you ever done something that it's inexplicable? The chances of you succeeding are terrible. But for some reason, you're not getting tired. It doesn't matter what it takes. You know that this was your destiny. You were meant for this. It's almost like you have a memory of something that hasn't happened yet. Right? And that's exactly, I would talk to him, I'd say, I feel like we've already been through this. Like there's another version or another iteration or another dimension or something where we have already done this. We've already solved this. Like almost like deja vu, but much deeper than that. And he said, yeah, I know what you mean. We've already done this. And when he said that to me, I was like, it's all the validation. It's like that. I don't care what anybody else says. And I can tell you that tap into this place. This is the reason why so many students or so many people, like if you look at what is the difference between the people who succeed and the people who are not, They have access to the same stuff, the same training, the same material, the same. And with heroes that are underage, it's even more dramatic because some of them are in the same house, and some of them have the exact same access to technology. They're using the same internet, the same phone, the same computer. One of them, is paralyzed from the neck down. The other one is completely able-bodied. The one who's paralyzed is out doing the. You know what I mean? Like, what is the difference? And it's what they tap into, where they're getting their energy from. They're getting it from a place that seems endless. And by doing that, Steve Jobs talked about this. There's a quote we have from Steve Jobs. I've used this many times. He talks about the RDF, the reality distortion field, and how, here's his quote, "At first you have to create it, and that takes work. Then each time it takes less work to get there, to get to this place of being a badass, because it gets stronger. The RDF gets stronger. Then each time it takes less work to get there as it gets stronger. Eventually, no work is needed, and the creation becomes the creator." Eventually, no work is needed, and the creation becomes the creator. In other words, once you build this RDF, the reality distortion field, which makes people feel like they're Superman, each person's like Superman, you can do so much more. The great line there is when he met with the executive from the Pepsi. He said, "Hey, do you want to keep making sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want a chance at changing the world?" The story behind that is actually much deeper. His wife, that executive's wife, had told him again and again, "Don't you dare go meet with him. Don't talk to him, because all he's going to do is try to get you to get the job." And she had got the dream job. She had struggled for most of her life. Finally, they had their dream executive job. Working at like Pepsi or Coca-Cola in the 80s was like, working at like Intel or Microsoft now. It was this big deal, And so she made him. She said, and the words she said to him is, "If you sign that contract, if you go work for Apple, you're signing our divorce papers." That's what she had said to him. She had met with him for less than 1 minute, and she said, "You have to go work there." He said, "Well, what made you change your mind?" And the comment she made, basically, I'm paraphrasing, is that every now and then you meet someone who, this is what she had told the author of the book, who makes you feel like all the thinking, all the potential you had before you met them was like 1%. You were at 1%, 2%, 3% of your potential before you met them. They open up the world of possibilities, and that's what Steve Jobs did. There's a scene in the movie where he says, "What is the most inefficient human in the world, or inefficient animal in the world?" The human. "What's the most efficient animal in the world?" It's like the condor or something. And he says the most inefficient animal in the world is a human. But you give a human a bicycle, and they become the most efficient human in the world, or they become the most efficient animal in the world. I'm screwing this up, but basically a human is the most inefficient. You give him a bicycle, now he becomes the most efficient. The idea is that you give him a tool. He said a computer is a bicycle for your mind, right? And in just a few seconds, transmitting this massive amount of data. That is the RDF, the reality distortion field. He often talked about how the ideas he had did not come from him. You go through Tesla, Da Vinci, Socrates, anybody else, all these people refer to this exact same thing. When we talk about the universe smile, the smile of the universe, or what they're calling that other book, whatever, called it the life force or whatever. And the opposite of it. And in some, we call it the LC stuff. We could probably come up with a better PG name for it, right? But it's a spectrum. You are on a spectrum. And the key to unlocking your potential is to tap into that, so you have that unlimited source. That's step one. Because if you don't do that and you're doing LC stuff, well, then for your entire life, you're trying to look. This is why, like in real estate or in business building, why so many people, what's the fastest way to make money? Or how do I do this? They're always trying to look for the lowest hanging fruit, because they know they're just going to quit. When somebody says, "Does this work in my area?" which is a big one in real estate, you guys, it's amazing. You're doing deals. You're doing the very deals that they're saying don't work in the area. How amazing is that? And they've had decades. Had more experience. If you cut their experience in half, it's older than you, right? And you're still making these deals happen, and they're trying to tell you it doesn't work in the area. When somebody says, "Does it work in my area?" or something, what they're really saying is, "Can I quit now?" It's another way of saying that. They haven't tapped into this. They're not living their best selves. If you want to get to the place where you're in the best version of yourself, this is what you've got to do. We have next the destiny diagram is part of this as well. You really should spend time with this. We have 3 main areas. Number 1 is what you're passionate about, what you love. What you love is over here at the top. Then the bottom left of that, we have 3 main circles. Number 1 is what you love. Over here is what you're good at, and over here is what the world needs. The overlap between what you love and what you're good at. What you love and what you're good at is your passion. The overlap of what you're good at and what the world needs is your gift. And what the world needs and what you love is your calling. And you know it's your calling because it keeps calling, as we say. The center of this, when you know you're tapping into this place, when you know you're getting where you need to be, because all this is about getting to gratitude and perspective. That's what all 5 of these things are. When you get to that place of infinite gratitude, you have a much better perspective. You are the combination of what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs right now. That is your destiny. That's where you're supposed to be. The combination of your gift, your passion, and your calling, what you're supposed to do with your life. And when you're there, you'll know it, and there's no settling. You should never try to settle on anything other than that. This is the idea behind this, right? If I'm missing something, if I'm missing anything in the summaries, because I took all these notes, I put them together. All right, number 2 is a memento mori. This was the famous Roman generals. You know, the best thing you could have at that time was to be to have a conquering, to be at the head of an army and to have won a battle. Those people were held in the highest esteem. They were more than celebrities. They were treated, almost worshipped by the people. And one of the people they would have, when you would have this giant parade and all this, praising of you going on, and your whole life is celebrating. Everyone's talking about how amazing and wonderful you are. What they had is a slave who would stand right behind your shoulder. A slave, someone who well beneath you in status and class, and someone that's not seen on your level. And that person would say memento mori, which is basically, remember, death is certain. You're going to die. This idea that now we have it. It can be a noun, like it can be a memento mori, something that you keep around you. My cousin had made some money in Silicon Valley, and then he was able to do whatever he wanted, and he always wanted to get into law enforcement, went to NYPD, eventually the FBI. His first day on the NYPD was Halloween 2004, 2003, something like that. And this is a story I've used many times. I want you to think about your challenges right now, how big they are, because we always think our challenges are huge and enormous, right? So just make a note of how big you are. We call it the monster in me. How big you are versus your challenges. You're this tiny little thing. Usually most people feel like that. And your challenges are these giant 10,000-foot monsters with 1,000-foot razor-sharp teeth and 100 rows of those teeth. And they've got X-ray, Superman. Talking a lot about Superman today. They've got those, those eyes that can just melt you. This giant monster. Those are your challenges. And poor little you is this tiny little guy. So keep in mind, the example I go to, the exercise we have in the book is make a note of all your challenges right now. The challenges, some goal that you think is far away, make a list of the challenges, mental note of the challenges in getting there. How hard is it for you to get there? Most people think it's very difficult to get there. And their challenges are huge, enormous, these giant mountains of challenges, right? Now, we could try to motivate them or tell them how they can really do it and all that stuff. None of that is more important than perspective. Just a tiny change of perspective, a memento mori, totally changes everything. So my cousin, first day at NYPD, and a guy had fallen on the train tracks. I think he was a 25-year-old young man, had fallen on the train tracks, and he'd fallen in such a way where the train ran over him, and it went over his chest down. And he was totally fine, though. He was like talking and fine. They stopped the train. But they looked underneath it. They had, I think there was a surgeon even there. They checked it out, and there was just no way, because it's America, right? They'll do whatever it takes to save even one life. They have to shut down the whole subway, lift the subway up, dig it up, whatever they have to do. But the fact is, beneath his chest, everything was spaghetti. It was just, there's nothing they could do, no matter what they do. They said, you know what? It's a miracle that you're alive and talking right now and that you're not in pain, but you're going to pass out any minute now. You're going to there's nothing we can do. We're so sorry. We're going to just move the train, and we'll try, but, this is probably going to be it. And he says, I understand. And people were gathering around and crying and stuff. And then my cousin's partner asked, well, before we do this, do you have anybody you want us to call? And he said, yeah. Could you call my mom? And I just want you to stop for a second and think about if that happened to you. If you had 30 seconds to live, you had one phone call, who would you call and what would you say? Just think about that for a second. So he ended up calling his mom. She didn't answer, and they left a voicemail. And I've always thought about how many times that mother must have listened to that voicemail, right? How many, she probably knows every millisecond, every crack, every background noise, everything in that voicemail, right? But that's the concept. The main thing I'd say is, who would you call and what would you say? Just think about that. Now, let's go back to your challenges. How big do your challenges, your monsters seem now? Tiny, right? And how big do you seem? You seem bigger than the monster, right? The monster in me is not really, it's not the idea that your challenges are monsters. It's with the right perspective, your challenges become, those monsters become tiny and you become the monster. It's the monster in you. It's not the monster and me, the monster in me. It's kind of a play on words. But that's how you become that monster. Memento mori, realizing there's a few experiments that we go over in the book where people basically ask, you give people a story, and then at the end of the story you ask them a series of questions. What would you do? Or what should the person do? Or what advice would you give? And some of the answers are deemed as normal, some of them are cowardly, some of them are courageous answers, like the brave answer, right? And most people don't pick that. But all they have to do, so you get a baseline score from people of what people say. Then you have other people come in, they do basically the same thing. Then another group of people come in and they pick all the brave answers. They're filled with bravery. They're like the most courageous people ever after they read these stories and give these answers. What's the difference between that group and the other groups? The difference is right before they gave them the test, they said, we want you to write down the age that you think you'll die at. That's it. Just think about death. Just realize that this is temporary. Memento mori. No matter how great and wonderful or terrible and awful, no matter what you think, just realize you will die. It is a certainty. All this is temporary. It's all coming to an end. Above my desk, people ask this all the time. And I thought about this for a while. What's the most important? Like one sentence or the fewest words I would put, the biggest lesson I've learned. And after thinking about it for like 3 weeks, it was the same thing kept coming up again and again. And it's just passing through. You, me, all of us, we're just passing through. None of this is permanent. The only thing that really matters is the help that you provide other people with the time that you have here. None of this is a big deal. Thinking of death makes you brave. It makes you make better decisions, realizing you're going to die. You make less kind of puss in boots decisions. You become more of a badass, just realizing, having some memento mori around you, and keeping it in some, it doesn't have to be a picture of a skull or something like just passing through, or something that people ask about as well. Memento mori, realizing you're going to die, is one of the best ways to build confidence and to get fearlessness. Number 3, the other thing about bulletproof confidence. This is 3, bulletproof confidence. So 1 is tapping the universe, 2, memento mori, 3, bulletproof confidence. How are we doing on time? Are we good? Okay, so confidence is Latin for trust, and for intense trust. Intense trust. The question is intense trust in who? Or in what? And you can have intense trust in the universe or in God, but ultimately the confidence that we develop is intense trust in yourself to regain control. This is Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Here's a quote from him. He also wrote The Power of Myth, and this is a quote from that book. He was talking about building confidence and talking about fear, and he was talking about the lessons he learned from Nietzsche. Here's what he said. Furthermore, the more challenging or threatening the situation or context to be assimilated and affirmed, the greater the stature of the person who can achieve it. And this is the line you guys recognize. I have this written down. The demon that you swallow gives you its power. And the greater life's pain, the greater life's supply. The demon that you can swallow. The demon that you can swallow gives you its power. And the greater life's pain, the greater life's supply. The way to look at your challenges or things that you're fearful of, this is kind of the mentality. All this stuff is about thought control, because if you can control how you think, you control how you feel, and you control what you do, ultimately with our formula, our achievement formula, that's what it is, controlling your thoughts. If you can look at a challenge and say, no matter how scary or how big it looks, it is ultimately a demon that once swallowed will give you its power. The power, the fear that you have as you look at it will be the fear, the same power you will have in you, in your bones, in your bloodstream. It'll be going to your veins once you swallow that demon. I love this. The demon that you could swallow gives you its power. It's brilliant stuff. The other idea here, this was from Michaels. This is another quote that we used here. I don't know if we use this in the book or not, or where you guys, okay, so it is. All right, this is from Michaels. This is after studying over 100 ultra-high achievers, as they talk about in the book. Your primary emotional responsibility is to keep yourself in a positive state, no matter what's happening around you. No matter what's happening around you. We all have the ability to do this, to generate an enthusiastic, inspired sense of life, no matter what circumstances we're in. This is why we have, right, as soon as I talk about enthusiasm, the big sign we have, enthusiasm makes up for everything. This is the mantra that we have on our team. The ability to control your enthusiasm. Ultimately, what confidence comes from is an intense trust in knowing that no matter what happens, you can control your enthusiasm. Stutz said, here's another quote that we have, demoralization is like a boulder beginning to roll down a deep hill, the D word. Oh man, this is so brilliant. The demoralization is like a boulder beginning to roll down a steep hill. The secret is to stop it at the moment it starts to roll. So you prevent it from picking up speed. By the time it's halfway down the hill, it has too much momentum, you will struggle to stop it. This is the D word, staying away from the D word. By maintaining your enthusiasm, making sure that ultimately what we want our confidence in is not the ability that you're going to control what happens, but you can control your enthusiasm. And if you just stay enthusiastic through everything, things will work out for you. And having intense trust that when you do these 3 things so far, plug into the universe, be the baddest version of yourself, the badass version of yourself. Memento mori, where you're constantly filling yourself up with bravery and courage, knowing that it's all temporary, no matter good or bad, it's all temporary. It's just part of the ride, and you can control the way the ride goes. And you focus on your confidence of knowing that no matter what happens, your ability to maintain enthusiasm makes up for everything. Number 4, I knew this would be on here, EA, emotional assignment. Steve Jobs, one of the best examples we use is when they were trying to cut down the boot time. They went from 5 seconds, it was 5 seconds. To cut down the boot time by 5 seconds was seen as impossible. Steve went to his team and said, I think we could do it by 10 seconds. They said, oh, no, there's no way. It's impossible. It's impossible. Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it. This went on and on. Can't do it. Can't do it. Finally, he said, what if the life of a child depended on you cutting it down by 10 seconds? He said, okay, what if the life of every child in the world depended on you cutting it down by 10 seconds? And they're like, okay, I guess there might be a way. He's like, well, think about this. If you go to if there's a falling bus of orphans, and Superman or whatever comes over, Superman again, right? Superman comes and saves that bus. What did he really save their lives? If a heart surgeon does heart surgery on you, or if you're choking and a doctor saves you, or if you go to a doctor, you get some surgery done that's a life, altering surgery. We call it life-saving surgery. Have they really saved your life, or they have just given you more time, right? They didn't really save your life. It's not like you're avoiding death. You're just delaying it, right? We measure life by how much time we have on Earth. So think about this. If we sell 1 million computers and we cut down that boot time by 10 seconds, that's 10 million seconds times, usually people boot on average about 3 times a day. So we're talking about 30 million. You see everyone's getting 30 seconds. Right, so 30 million seconds, right? So you start adding this up, so you added this up to whatever it came out to. She just adds like 2.5 billion seconds. You start adding the seconds and you start seeing how much time, millions of seconds, billions of seconds, tens of billions of seconds. And every month you have the ability to add centuries of time into the world. That's how they were looking at it. So and that's only if they sell 1 million. And people reboot 3 times. That's 30 million seconds we're putting back into the world, right? And then the numbers she's coming up with are multiplying it. It just gets ridiculous. But I think he went with 2.5 billion. And he started telling them, listen, when you do this, if we reduce that boot time by 10 seconds, we are having the effect of 1,000 heart surgeries. So when you cut open the computer, the quote here from the engineer, when we open up the computers, we were not looking at memory, motherboard, or what's that other thing? USB. I don't think they were. I don't see the rest of the quote or whatever. Maybe it was USB, but we were not looking at that. His point was when we cut open the computer, we were having the effect of performing 1,000 or 1 million heart surgeries. That's what EA is, emotional assignment, emotional investment, looking at one thing and you see something else. And when you can have other people see that, where you're not just opening a computer and trying to mess with the motherboard, you're actually having the effect of performing 1 million heart surgeries, because that's how many you're adding centuries of life into the world and giving people that. When you can have that kind of effect, that kind of impact, it's like you RDF. When you tap into that universe, when you tap into the source, when you tap into the universe's smile, when you tap into that you are contagious, and it makes up everything you do. To do this, we look at 3 things differently: time, people, and work. Number 1 is the time. So if you look at the impact you're going to have with something you do, if you improve somebody's life or somebody's when we talk about one person, that's why I asked you earlier, how many people learned to read this week or this month? It looked like there were 2 people from the tutoring that you guys were doing. 2 people learned to read. Well, how long is that going to impact that person's life? And when you think about it, it's like, wow, for the rest of their life, they're going to, what's the average life expectancy of somebody who's, normal and healthy? It's about 70, 80 years. So if somebody's, 20 years old and you help them read, for the next 50 years, their life is improved by that. But not only is their life improved, but their children's lives are improved. And if they already have kids, they're going to be better current parents. And then if they're better parents, those kids are going to be better parents in turn. And if they can remember these things and, have the same impact with somebody else as you had with them, the effect you have is a ripple that is impossible to imagine how large and how far-reaching it is. But if you just look at that from the start, like look at it, 10 seconds may seem impossible, but cutting down by 10 seconds. By the way, to finish that story, they didn't cut it down by 5 seconds or 10 seconds. They cut down the boot time by 20 seconds, right? So they actually had an even bigger impact than the centuries they thought of. But when you can look at that by teaching someone to read, or solving one of the cold cases, or having somebody pick up a business, or having an inner city, like you guys are doing, having one, somebody who's been on government support for 50 years, 60 years, and now for the first time they can actually go out and create income. the impact that has, not just, think about the generations, welfare and things like this are generational, but so is the opposite. We can actually create a generational impact with business. So when I sit down and record this, when I ask for these notes from you guys, that's what I'm looking at. The time that we have, especially now when you record it and put it online, once you put it online, the recording you have is going to outlive you. And once it gets on the cloud, it's going to outlive the earth. And once it gets saved on what they're calling the super cloud, where everything's going to be on the cloud, it will outlive all of humanity, right? It will outlive our planet. And the impact you can, so that's the time, the first thing, look at how long of an impact you're going to have when you help one person. But then look at the people. How many people can they help? The ripple effect it has, this viral volunteerism, the idea that when you're helping one person, the people that they help, it's a domino effect. And then ultimately it comes back to the work, looking at what you're doing right now and having emotional assignment to it. So you're not just helping one person read, you're helping 1,000 people learn how to read in 100 years, right? You're helping this person open a school or do something. The story you tell yourself empowers you it allows you to create that emotional assignment when you're having that first call. You're not picking up the phone and calling a seller. You're picking up the phone and reshaping centuries of oppression that these people have been through. You get what I'm saying? It's that kind of thinking that will shape everything you do in the future.
Good.
Yeah. I'm not an expert at all. All I know is with this universal energy. I mean, think of it like everything you see, everything that we know of, everything that we see is all an island, and there's a current containing it, right? And once you can connect to that current, you can feel other things in the island. If I were to ask you, what is your, like if I tapped your leg and said, is that you? You'd say yes. And if I tapped the chair and I'd say, is that you? You'd say no. Why? Why is that not you? What are you really? And this gets much deeper. That's what Poincaré, I didn't read the rest of the quote, but he gets very deep and it's crazy to see a guy who was such the math problem that Henri Poincaré came up with was unsolvable until like 2003, and he died in like 1910, 1912 or something like that. This guy's a genius, just on a whole nother level. But he talked a great deal about this. So did Da Vinci, so did Hero from Egypt. We talk a lot about it. Probably the greatest mind to ever live. Anytime, everybody I've ever read, going back to Socrates, everybody that you ever read, and every holy book as well, they refer to it as God. It's the same thing that we are all islands in a much larger current. And when you can tap into that current, you have limitless energy, limitless potential, limitless optimism, right? Optimism is a drug. It's the most attractive thing, the most profitable thing, the most lucrative thing, the most addictive and contagious thing is just in general optimism. The level of optimism that you experience, and the more delusional, the more, if you go up the achievement spectrum, the people that do the most are the most delusionally optimistic. And in every case, that you have to be to overpower the general LC-ish, universe that most people are living in. But to answer that, the idea that once you tap into the undercurrent, that everything is an island on, you can feel other things in the island and realize that current is really just a smaller island in a much larger current. This idea, like your body, what is the experience of your body, right? Like if I asked you, well, what are you really? You would say your body. You, whatever you are, ends at the boundaries of your physical body, right? But we know that's not true. You feel things outside of your body. You've had premonitions. You've had deja vu, or whatever we want to call it. We've had things like that. We've thought somebody, you think somebody's going to call you, and they end up calling you. You're thinking about a movie and it comes on TV or something like that. We've had things like this where you think about something. If you focus, I've always been amazed by this. If you focus on the taste of a strawberry long enough and hard enough, your mouth will start to water. Your thought is actually a physical thing. We can actually track a thought, but that thought actually has an impact in the real world. It actually creates a physical materialization of that thought. And if you know that if we consider what your body is, what you sense, your sensory, your perception of sensing, right? Like when I touch your leg, that's you. When I touch the chair, that's not you. The larger, we know for sure that you feel things that are outside of your body. I mean, we've all had this experience, right? Things that are outside of your immediate senses. So whatever you are is larger than the boundaries of your physical body, right? This is crazy stuff that I don't really know that much about. Like, I don't really understand this myself. I just know when I first started reading about this, think about this, all right? All this stuff, all the special needs projects, and right now she made a list on the page, on the Badass Stuff page. Just check this out. The special need, we have the largest group, building the largest group, I think we already have now, of special needs business owners in the world. Inner city business owners, over 1 million. The goal is to build over 1 million inner city business owners. I think we're already on track to be more than anyone else in the Midwest. Cold case detectives, the largest group of special needs cold case detectives. Right now, working on the largest real estate newsletter for Indiana or the Midwest. A mission to start in India and then move on and take over these other markets with the RIA process that we've been doing. She's been doing a great job on that. Eye surgeries, the genome sequencing, building a world with an average life expectancy of 300 years. The banking, the largest private bank for special needs, vegan food delivery, the largest inner city farming, the ghetto farming. All these are things that have all been built in the last, like, ever since I started, when we started working with heroes, all this stuff. I'm not even halfway through this list of all the things that are done that are record breaking. I mean, these are things that, most of these things are things that people have never accomplished. I'm not saying that again to brag. It's not me. It's you guys. It's all of us together. But what started this is, again, it comes down to that memory. I had a memory of something that hadn't happened yet. And when it did happen, I knew exactly what it was going to be like. I knew what the clouds were going to look like. I knew what the food was going to taste like. I knew what songs would be playing, right? I knew what clothes I'd be wearing. It wasn't just like I didn't want to say it out loud because it sounds crazy, but the more people I talk to, the more people know about this. And it's like tapping into that place. I'm not saying that, like, even right now, no matter how I feel right now, as soon as I'm talking about this stuff, as soon as I get around people that are into it, it takes, I feel it. Nobody questions my commitment, my sincerity, my passion about this, right? Like, I know this is a part of my destiny. I'm supposed to be doing this. We were supposed to meet and connect and do these things. I know that 100%. I can feel it. And I only am interested in working with people, just like I always say this, I'm looking for more Annas, and that's it. I don't want to lower the bar. That's it. People like that, as you know, hungry as that. If you can make me look lazy, you are, I mean, you're really something special. You know what I mean? That's the goal of, make me look lazy, And that's why, when I say I never go on vacation, people are like, oh my gosh. When people think about having money or living in these nice neighborhoods, or, whenever you always picture people like on yachts or on vacation, but the people that actually got there in one generation, like they lived in the neighborhood I used to live in and live in the neighborhood that I live in now, like the people that actually made that transition, it's very few people, but, almost nobody has any social mobility. Income ascension is basically dead, but the people that have, they don't take breaks. They don't do it to go on vacation. That's like saying, I want a six-pack so I can eat ice cream all day. The person that's going to do it is not going to want that, The person you're going to become is not going to be a person that wants that stuff or is attracted to that stuff. And this is why the better you get at tapping into that and going to that place in the universe, going to that place in your mind and tapping into that energy, it's like a muscle, right? And you'll stay in that place where quitting and winning are equally as unattractive. You just want to keep going. You want to keep progressing. And that leads us to number 5, right? How is this stuff, by the way? Is this helpful? Is this good? Am I doing a good job of summarizing the stuff? Okay, good. All right, so hero narrate. This is 5, hero narration. This is one of the best things we probably have come up with in the last, I'd say probably in 2020, this idea of writing out your life in a comic book. So when we go to movies all the time and see like the Avengers or all these other Space Cadet, or what's the other one? Iron, whatever's happened. All these movies, Spider-Man's, all these movies that come out. But you can write your life in the same way. You can basically do what Stan Lee did. You can write your own life. Imagine you're writing whatever's happening right now. You're in a comic book pane, and then start narrating your own life. We call it hero narration. Basically, you can start saying it out loud. This is something that a lot of people, I've seen the results people had, and then I started doing it myself. So when you're saying something like the hero was nervous, but he knew that when he swallowed this demon, he would get its power. Saying that stuff out loud, writing it down. Ultimately, what this does is it turns into a game, and this is really the secret of everything. All life is, whatever you have is an accumulation of your habits, of your rituals, of the same things that you go through, the same traditions that you go through, the same scripting. We all use scripts. People say that they hate scripts. Everyone uses scripts, right? So the better you do this, it's not so much, people often will ask, well, how do I get better at doing this or that, or how do I, improve my whatever. Like how do I, grow my business, or how do I get into real estate, or these ideas that people have. Ultimately, when somebody has a serious business, especially if they've built a business that has social mobility or that's created income ascension, what they have done is instituted a series of behaviors, a series of habits, a series of, all policies really are, it's just behaviors of a company, right? The habits of a business, or the behaviors of the people. And it's the accumulation, right? It's the same thing we talk about with the physics of the domino, right? We get to that first domino is 2 inches, but one domino knocks over one 50% bigger than it can knock one over 50% bigger than itself. You start at 2 inches. By 23, you're at the Empire State Building. By 38, you can take out satellites. or by 30 you could take out satellites. Then when we get up to like 57, we're talking about the moon, taking down the moon. You get up to 76, you could take out the sun, the moon, all the planets in our solar system, that domino. That kind of accumulation, the day 38 accumulate, how do you go from 1 penny gets to the 10 million, all that stuff that we've talked about, it's all an accumulation. So the secret to really getting far and how far you will go with whatever avenue you're pursuing is, do you enjoy the accumulation? Are you looking at the accumulation as a game? If you look at it like, oh, I have to make these calls, or I have to talk to these people, or I have to go look at these places, versus I get to, I'm thrilled, I love it. And the hero narration helps with that. It helps you. It's not so much like, we all know, it's like the yoga laughter stuff where people go up and they start laughing like, ha, 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 I have cancer, ha, 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 my husband beats me, ha, 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 whatever. Like they say stuff, they fake laugh. But you fake laugh enough to where you actually start to really laugh. And so it's this thing where we think, oh, when I'm happy, I laugh. But the opposite is just as true. When you laugh, you're happy. When we look at what changes what you're thinking right now, what changes your ability to achieve, it's what you're thinking, what you're saying, and or what you're doing. And it can be in any variation. First, you think, say, do, or say, do, think. Do, think, say. It doesn't matter how we use those kind of our formula for achievement, but ultimately that's what you want to control, and that's what hero narration does. Because when you write these things down, you write down your wins, you become addicted to improving them. It becomes a game, and ultimately all that stuff does is it adds to you enjoy the accumulation. That's the biggest secret. I could just summarize it with that, but when people say, like, if you look at like 10 people getting into real estate, the person that enjoys day one, the person that enjoys the accumulation of just talking to people. I just like talking to people. I just like making friends. I just like running dialogue. I like using algorithms. I like the idea that when I pick up my phone, I'm able to create income ascension and help these people. I'm able to look at emotional assignment. I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the same thing when the computer guys open up a computer. They're not opening up a computer and try to do the impossible. They have the ability, the opportunity. They're grateful to be in the position where they can have the impact of doing 1 million open heart surgeries. You know what I'm saying? So hero narration isn't just about saying stuff out loud, like, oh, the hero, when he met her, she couldn't resist his charms, stuff like that. It's pretty funny because you say it out loud. People like react to that stuff because they know what you're saying. They know what you're doing instinctively. But it also helps with people who have, reading disabilities and things like that, and especially the cognitive delays, start describing the situation better. And one of the things that we started doing is you come up with an animal and you have something that it's doing. And it starts like 5 or 10% throughout the day. So if you have like a pterodactyl that is playing chess, well, what does he need to do to win? He needs to be at 100%. So we start him at 5 or 10%, and then every day throughout the day you need to get him up to 5%. You need to get him up 10% higher. You need to get him from 20% to 25%. And we colored it in this thermometer. Each of these kids had a thermometer where they had a hero that they were actually coloring in. How does the hero get to? How does the pterodactyl? We give him a name. Let's call him Bob. How does Bob get to 30%? What does he have to do? And they write it down, they go and they gamify it. And then every day at the end of the day, we see how close to 100% they got. And it became a game. This is how we got, you could use these simple items and you gain compliance with yourself as well, which some of you, this is not going to happen. And you have no idea what this means yet. But there's a lot of people that get like stuck in these ruts for decades of laziness and settling and stuff. And one way out of that is to start doing hero narration. Start narrating your life as if it's a comic book. You start talking about yourself in the third person while you're doing stuff. The hero was nervous, but he knew, and you move forward. And what happens? You do whatever you need to where you enjoy the accumulation. 100 people will go out and talk to 5 sellers today. They'll do that every day for the next 5 days. The person who enjoyed it, who enjoyed the actual accumulation, the actual process, that's the person that's going to go the furthest. It's not necessarily about enjoying it, but convincing yourself you enjoy it to the point you enjoy it. It's like the yoga laughing. Just fake laugh until you actually are laughing. You actually think it's funny. And you can take these giant scary things and you can laugh at them because ultimately you know that you're going to approach your challenges with enthusiasm, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so coming back to these 5 things. Am I doing a good job of summarizing this? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. If I did, just don't just go ahead and interrupt. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I'll repeat it if it doesn't pick up on the mic. So lesson 1, what do we say? Tapping in the universe. It's just like a muscle. The more you do it, the more you're going to stay in that state of the best version of yourself. Don't bring a compromised version of yourself to the party and then expect things. This is why people say, oh, well, how quickly is it going to take for me to make money? Or how quickly is it going to take for me to lose weight? Because they know they're going to quit, right? It's, there are people who say, what's the easiest way to do this or whatever? The better question is, what's the hardest way? Because do that, everything else will be easy, right? So number 1, tap into the universe. We've talked, this is a great length, understanding that the more you feel, the broader that you can make your sensory, your perception of your sensory beyond your body, the more you can start tapping into. It's like, it's like you turn on a faucet, but it's connected to the ocean, right? That's how much energy, water, brilliance that you have. Tap into the universe. So we talked about all these things are 5 ways to stay in a state of constant perspective and gratitude, to realize none of this stuff is that hard. It's all a walk in the park and it's fun. Number 1, tap in the universe. Number 2, memento mori. Remember, you're going to die. And having that gives you courage. Number 3, confidence. Having enormous, intense trust in your ability to maintain your enthusiasm, because knowing that enthusiasm makes up for everything. Number 4, EA, emotional assignment. Take the smallest thing, whether it's putting on your shoes. And, it's an amazing thing. Some of the people that came up with this list are no longer with us. So this is why, I have not missed a day of working out. And we were just talking about this. I haven't missed a single day of working out. And now I'm not saying the workout might be like just a walk, like a mile or 2 walk. But so which tells you, by the way, when I'm overweight, it's like, wow, I was eating. Like I had to really focus on the eating. And, even though it made me sick, I couldn't be a quitter. I had to focus, eat to gain all that weight. But I don't have a problem with it at all. It's not work at all. It's not difficult at all for me to work out at all. It doesn't even take anything at all. And it is from, being around, seeing stuff that you guys, knowing that the ability I have over my body, the control I have, is something that people would kill for. When you go around, we have the Project Legacy, when people have ALS or other things that are, they're the actual word, debilitating, but there's another word that they've come up with, that when you can tell, like you feel tingling in your knee and then your knees go. You feel a tingling in your waist, then your waist goes. You feel a tingling in your vocal cords, you're going to stop losing the ability to speak. And so we have these videos now, these legacy videos, where you can record these videos for your family. One of the things with ALS is that, and other diseases like it, is that often it doesn't change, although you'll be handicapped, it doesn't change your life expectancy, right? Which is crazy, because you're basically going to be dependent. And a lot of people say, just unplug me. But it's a tough thing for a family to go through. This is like really heavy stuff. And when you're around people like that, people that know that in a month, less than 90 days, you're going to be breathing on a ventilator. You're not going to have the ability to speak, but now you do. What would you record? Who would you record videos for? Your daughter might be 5 years old, but you record a video for her graduating high school, graduating college, and graduating, or getting married. And you're just getting, you're explaining to her what you think the guy's going to be like, what you think her kids are going to be like. These conversations, we've been in the room with these conversations, it's like intensely emotional. Like you get around that stuff, you think you're going to be belly aching about, does this work in my area, or any of these other questions that we're talking. No, you are unstoppable. This is how you become unstoppable, with that perspective. And it's not just about necessarily a memento mori like the death, but realizing that everything slowly dies. You will lose control of your arms. You will lose control. There will be a moment where there is a word that is the last word you ever speak. You will close your eyes once and never be able to open them, or open them and never close them. You will lose control over every part, every faculty of your body. And while you have it right now, the question is, what did you do with it? And thinking about that stuff really fills you up, and understanding that every moment that you have is a moment to fill with enthusiasm. The better you do that, the more control you have, and ultimately that's how you build that bulletproof confidence. That was number 3. Number 1, tap in the universe. Number 2, memento mori. 3, bulletproof confidence. 4, EA, emotional assignment, looking at one thing and seeing something else. I think that's where we were at. Understand when you look at this, even the smallest things, whether it's putting on your shoes, that this is something somebody would die for. That somebody that someday you won't be able to do that. And it also, that's what I meant by working out. That's why it's easy to work out when you're around people and you see this stuff. It gives you perspective. Filled with gratitude, go out like a badass. And number 5, hero narration leads to being able to gamify it, to where you're writing down your progress every day. You've turned it into a game. It becomes fun. Setting records becomes a new high. We create our win cycle. You set a record, hit your record, dance, you document and celebrate, and then you keep repeating that, and it becomes addictive. The same addiction that a heroin addict experiences, or somebody who's smoking or drinking or whatever, it's the same addiction you can have with wins. It's the same thing like when you watch kids playing video games. It doesn't matter how hard the video game is. They'll ask their friends. They'll look up answers online. They'll watch videos. They have resourcefulness because it's gamified. You can create that same result within yourself, and it's the same process that you go through. Ultimately, all of this is to you enjoy the accumulation, because your life is basically just an accumulation of your efforts, of your thoughts, of your attitude, of your enthusiasm, and you can control it and enjoy the accumulation that you have, and that is how to be badass. Did I get it right? Am I down with the 5? All right, so again, I just ran through this. The top in the universe, number 1, number 2, memento mori, number 3, confidence, 4, emotional assignment, emotional investment in everything that you do. and make it dramatic, make it amazing. It becomes contagious. And number 5, hero narration, gamify, so you can enjoy the accumulation. That's how you develop the place of infinite gratitude. Does that make sense? Did I cover everything? Did I do a good job? Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. You guys are great. All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon. I love you guys. Thanks.